perhaps the game of the week, Seattle Seahawks and the Cincinnati Bengals. And we are sitting Cincinnati an expensive 2.5 or a cheap 3 home favorite over the Seattle Seahawks. 44.5 to 45 is your total. We know Adam has a play on this one. So getting out of order here, Adam, I'm going to start with you so we don't take any of your thoughts. Cincinnati and Seattle, 2.5 expensive, 3 cheap, or 44.5 to 45 is the total.
Seattle teaser leg, and a lot about the spot is going to worry people, right? You're seeing Cincinnati come back home after Joe Burrow, air quotes, looked like himself on the road against the Arizona Cardinals. And I asked you guys in our Slack chat yesterday about blitz rates for individual games, because I saw what the Cardinals blitz rate looks like on the season last. I saw what the Cardinals pressure rate looks like on the season last, and I wanted to see in particular, had they decided to come after Joe Burrow at all in that game. And what I noticed just going and watching the recap was Jonathan Gannon was terrified to bring more than 4 because he doesn't trust anybody in the back end of his defense. And guess what? You had to kind of pick your poison there, right? Like, he tried to play 7 back, and it still didn't make a difference because Jamar Chase was able to run through everybody, because nobody is able to make a difference there in that secondary for the Cardinals. But go inside that game a little bit. It was 24-20 with 17 minutes left in that game in favor of the Cincinnati Bengals. The Arizona Cardinals had a 4th and 1 in which they called some sort of odd designed keeper for Josh Dobbs. And then you end up with a punt, a pick 6, and the final margin is 14. Go back and look at what Joe Burrow was doing against the blitz the first 4 weeks of the season, in which, in past years, he was averaging 10 yards per attempt, 8 yards per attempt. Through 4 weeks, he had averaged 4.5 yards per attempt against the blitz, and the Cardinals simply refused to come after him. I do not think Pete Carroll's team is going to make the same mistake. I know Joe Burrow looked a little healthier last week, but I am not in a spot where I say to myself, Joe Burrow is healthy. I'm willing to move the Cincinnati Bengals right back up to where they were. Seattle is a bang average team for me across the board. Average offense, average defense. I have not seen Cincinnati perform against a non-Cardinals opponent at a level that says to me they're going to win by outside of a score. So I like Seattle getting 8.5 in Cincinnati.
Yeah, Steven, this one, everything screams Cincinnati to me, and yet I can't do it because I've only seen one game sample size of Joe Burrow looking like Joe Burrow, and so I just can't get there. I can't do it. Everything says they should win this game. Everything with the weapons that they have says that they should be able to win this game by more than a field goal, but I'm not going to do that. And listen, I'm higher on Seattle. Y'all know, I mean, coming in this year, I'm very high on Seattle. Seattle's just been okay, and that sits weirdly with me with Seattle. Like, they haven't really looked good at all this year, and so I'm going to sit back and see if this, like I said, I did put in an AFC North ticket on Cincinnati on the chance that Burrow actually is on the right side of good here, and that this team now is probably should be the favorite in that division, with given what's going on with Deshaun Watson and, of course, the state of where Pittsburgh is at. But that's really kind of my only, it's a tangent play, it's a side play here on Cincinnati.
More concerning for the Cincinnati offense is that Seattle might not even have to blitz to get pressure on Cincinnati. They quietly have a top 5 pressure rate this year with a blitz percentage that's only around league average. So if they're getting pressure on Burrow without blitzing, that's even more troublesome, to Adam's point. Part of that is the schedule they faced, but I still think they've been solid overall for Seattle. I actually think this is a slightly above average team in the NFL, certainly not one of the top 7 teams, in that kind of Lions tier, but maybe a notch below that. If you remove the week 1 game against the Rams, Seattle's resume looks impressive. Since week 2, this is a top 6 offense by EPA and success rate. They're facing a Cincinnati defense that has been bottom half of the league in those metrics. The Seattle defense is also number 1 against the run. So this might make Joe Burrow one-dimensional in this game. And if he's facing pressure, that's going to be a tough puzzle to put together for this offense in this one. So I thought the look ahead line here was probably off if Burrow was healthy. It was Seattle -2.5, but I thought flipping it all the way back the other way to a full 3 for Cincinnati was too far. So I bet Seattle +3 in this one. The Bengals still had less than 5 yards per play in that win against Arizona, to further the point that Adam had, that was a pretty close game for the majority of that contest. And they benefited greatly from that defensive score. In the first half, less than 4 yards per play for the Cincinnati offense against Arizona. So they still need to show me that they are back. If they do it here, they win by more than a field goal, then yeah, we can have that conversation. They go into the bye week, get more healthy. It's certainly a buy low for some of these futures, Matt, that you mentioned earlier in the pod. Some of us out there, we got some bonus bets and, regulated sports betting land out here. So a 30-1 on Jamar Chase to win Offensive Player of the Year in case he's back, and 80-1 on Joe Burrow in case he's back, because he does have the narrative if he starts going scorched earth and healthy here. But that's like some lunch money bets, right? Lunch money bets here and there on a tail end outcome if the Bengals look like they did the past couple of years. But I'll just remind you that even when the Bengals were amazing and the Bengals were getting to a Super Bowl, they were still the first team in NFL history to lose yards per play in 3 playoff games and reach the Super Bowl. So they were having a lot of variance go their way during that run. And it's not going their way now. And I still think they have a lot to prove here against Seattle. And I am impressed with Seattle to this point in the season.
Steven, bringing up that stuff has absolutely nothing to do with this season whatsoever. I would like to make that disclaimer on this podcast. And so just take all of what you just listened and rid it from your brain, because it has absolutely nothing to do with this year whatsoever.
The point is the Cincinnati defense lost talent coming into this year compared to those teams last year. And Joe Burrow has not been healthy. If he shows he's healthy here, then we can have a conversation about it.
With what happened in the playoffs last year from a yards per play. What the hell does that have to do with anything?
The idea is that there's people out there that think the Bengals were these amazing world beaters the past couple of years.
It's spitting out stats for the sake of spitting out stats is what that is. And I refuse to have that. I refuse to allow that on this podcast, because we're not going to be like everybody else.
Strike it from the record.
We're not going to be like everybody else. We're not going to be like everybody else. We're not doing that.
That's fine.
We're not doing the whole here's a stat that doesn't mean anything, but it makes me sound smart. So here, let me do it. No, we're not doing that. We're not doing that on this podcast. Absolutely not happening.
The point is, I would be very careful to assume that the Bengals are going to all of a sudden be a top 5 team again because he's healthy.
Look, if you're going to keep pushing this point, I'm not letting you have the last word on this. I will keep talking over you every time. You're bringing up stats from a year and a half ago on a playoff run that people don't even remember at this point. It's okay. It's fine. The Cincinnati Bengals were an above average team the year they got to the Super Bowl. They were an above average team last year, and maybe they finish up being an above average team this year. But right now, they're not.